The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk, the Bronx's flagship television talk show. Please have your say tonight by calling into the show at 718-960-7241. You can also email comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future program. Well, everywhere you turn, the numbers are staggering. This is the worst economic climate that many of us have ever seen, and every one of us knows someone who has lost their job, or maybe you yourself are unemployed at this point. President Barack Obama is valiantly trying to resuscitate the economy, but will the bailout plans work? And what are the prospects for us here in the Bronx as regards those plans? So much to talk about. We have two experts with us who are ready to go to work. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Hold Brothers Online Investment Services, Gregory Hold. Good evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gary.
And also a professor in the Monroe College King Graduate School of Business. He's been with us before. Professor Andrew Raleigh, welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here, Gary.
Mr. Hold, let's start with you. The Obama stimulus package, is this a good first step to getting the economy to recover?
I really don't think so, Gary. The package is called a stimulus package, but in reality, it's more of a wealth transfer. You see things like $100 billion in checks that just go to more disadvantaged Americans and nothing to wealthy Americans, and a lot of programs that don't necessarily stimulate the economy, but just enact some of Obama's pet projects. So I don't think that this is the
You don't think it's the answer?
Right.
Let's break down some of what you say when you say transfer to, not the wealthiest, but more needy people. There are a lot of people who would look around on the other side and said, you know what, we've had a transfer of wealth in this country over the last 10 years, and the transfer of wealth has built up the economy for those people who are among the wealthiest Americans to the detriment of the other Americans, and this is a way of kind of evening the scale, so to speak, so that we don't have, in essence, a class system or less of a class system.
Well, Gary, America's brand of capitalism has made it the most successful, greatest country in the world. Currently, 80% of the tax burden of the entire United States is carried by 20% of the people. So they're already paying their taxes. Every day we get immigrants, very educated, very talented people from other countries, especially socialist countries, who come here for the opportunity. So if we can't pull up the poor by pulling down the rich. The system has worked for many, many years. We've had a little blow up because of lack of regulation, but still the fundamentals of capitalism and the raw kind of capitalism that we practice in America are intact and important.
Do you think that it's a little blow up and that the wealthiest Americans will really be pulled down by this, or it's just a matter of, well, they'll just frankly skim it off the top a little bit? I realize we're talking in general terms and not specifics, but that's the way you've started, so I guess that's the way we'll go.
Well, certainly wealthy Americans have paid their price with the crash of the market, with it being down around 40%. They've gotten hit. And the danger with the tax system is thinking that just a little bit won't hurt. And it's only a few percentage points that separates the American system from a very left socialist country like France. And look at their decline over the years. Look at their lack of GDP growth. They have a per capita income of about 60% of the average Americans. So these small percentage points of taxes go a long way in hurting the economic growth of America.
Professor, your thoughts on, I guess, answering the same general question or on some of the things Mr. Hold has said?
Well, I don't know if the package really is going to resolve all the problems. The biggest thing I see, the issue is that, we've lost 5 million jobs so far. If this continues, how is that going to pull his stimulus package down? If you don't have people out there to spend the money because they're not making money, then how are you really going to grow the economy? And that's a big issue. And Plus he's talking about, or they're talking about, another possibility of a stimulus package sometime in October. So my question is, where are we getting the money from, first of all? And what does this really mean to the average individual in terms of taxation somewhere down the line? What we're really doing here is we're increasing our spending, and we're going to talk about decreasing our tax collections. How does that really work?
You know, one writer, in a way, we've got two different issues here. One issue is the concept of whether it's true that we're bringing down the rich in order to bolster the poor, which is what Mr. Hold said. And what you're talking about is, will this or will this not work and certainly inspire jobs, using jobs as the base concept. One writer that I read said that the stimulus package will save 3.5 million jobs, but the job loss is 4.1 million, with 600,000 lost jobs a month. His suggestion was that this doesn't even come near trying to do it, and that he would like to see a larger stimulus package, and that his problem with it was that the government wasn't spending enough to really resuscitate the economy. Would you feel better if they really put even more money toward job and job growth?
I would feel better if they had better policies in place that were going to say what was going to happen with the money they're investing. We're not too sure if this thing is going to work. We're not too sure about the markets he's getting involved with. There are so many financial problems, and they don't seem to be able to know which way they're going.
The implementation of
Absolutely.
it. We have a couple of calls, and we're going to bring those folks in. Mr. Hold, people in the Bronx, and this is a very interesting place to make some of the comments that you made. People in the Bronx are concerned because they have single parents who are struggling to keep their kids in school, struggling to pay their rent. They don't have enough services for whether it be school kids or senior citizens or health care, et cetera, et cetera. If the stimulus package, for instance, didn't help fund or help the state government at least keep status quo, these people would be even worse off than they are now, with the highest unemployment in the state. It becomes a very difficult thing for them to look and hear you say, you know what, the wealthy can't give a little more or can't bring down their bottom line so that we can keep some of our social programs and other programs in effect. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the best way to help the poor is to let the rich create jobs and to create opportunities and incentivize the rich. As you increase the tax burden of the rich, the production and the tax revenue actually goes down because their incentive goes down. Their propensity to take risks goes down. Some people flee, they go back to...
Isn't this the failed policy of the last 8 years that got us into this mess?
No.
In other words, we've allowed the capital system, which you said allowed America to become the greatest country in the world. We've allowed the capital system to do its thing without regulation or with fewer regulations, and the rich had opportunities because the taxes were not heavy on them. And now look at what we've got. We've got immense amount of white-collar crime, immense amount of white-collar problems that have caused and spurred on this terrible recession in the economy.
Well, Alan Greenspan is the person who overlooked the need to regulate derivatives. He thought, and he is quoted publicly as saying that that banks could regulate themselves and that Wall Street shouldn't get involved. The government shouldn't get involved. I'm sorry. And he was under the Clinton administration. So this started with Clinton, and Clinton had the opportunity to fix this and didn't.
George Bush inherited a very large surplus, and that is obviously now gone.
Bill Clinton's tax and spend policies only miraculously worked because it was coincidental. They were coincidental with one of the greatest technological booms in history, the internet. Had it not been for the white-hot economy resultant from the internet, Clinton's high tax.
And so George Bush, who inherited that same boom and the technology increased, couldn't help the economy. It collapsed the economy. Somehow I'm not following how the linear process there worked to make a recession.
Sure. In March 2000, the economy was, the stock market was at a high, and it burst under Clinton and continued to drop. So George Bush inherited a faltering economy and a failing stock market. Before he was inaugurated, it was already collapsing.
Not to mention what Barack Obama has inherited. Do you see this as in kind of the same way that Mr. Hold does, that this is a class thing where we've got to make sure to keep, quote unquote, for want of a better term, the rich or the wealthiest Americans strong so that they can stimulate the economy? Is that a way to go where we want to go?
Well, I think the rich basically have the opportunity to do many things, and you have to keep them incentivized to do those things here. If not, it's easy for them to just locate someplace else and do it on another worldwide base.
Are they really going to do that? And have they lost incentive now, or are they losing incentive because of the kind of stories that we hear from people like Rush Limbaugh and others who are telling them, in essence, let's see if we can turn this into a failed policy?
Well, I understand that they lost money. I think everybody's lost money. The rich lost money. So the idea
I think
is,
everybody at this table might have lost money.
can they lose less money someplace else? I mean, we really have not had great policies.
So
great
then
policies
all
at
of
all.
the patriotism that the wealthy have had in America doesn't mean anything if they start to lose a little money.
For most people, I would say so, because that's affecting their standard of living. That's affecting their quality of life.
Let's bring on a couple of Bronxites who have called in. Robert from Throgs Neck. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I just want to ask two questions. I want to make a quick comment. I lost my job recently because of an email that I sent to a client, and it just showed how, ownership just didn't really care about the economy.
Explain
but,
to me.
I got over that.
You need to just explain what that means because of an email you sent. I'm not sure what that means.
What as
That
far
you
as why
lost
I
your job because of an email? Did you say something wrong in the email? Did you threaten somebody?
No. I just basically told the client that if another manager in the company wasn't doing their job, here's the email of ownership, and ownership felt that there was a major trust factor there, and that I should have maybe took one for the team, and they just offered me severance pay and unemployment.
So
I just
what
accepted it. But I think that brings me to my next question. With all the series of violence that has broken out, people that have lost their jobs, in California, a man killed his family. In Binghamton, New York, a man went and just started shooting people. The more we start seeing these things, do you think at that point the powers that be may wake up and say something needs to be done? That's question number one. Question number two is, with the commercial real estate falling, from what I hear, can we expect malls to close at a fast rate?
Expect what to close?
Malls.
Oh, malls, shopping malls.
Right, because of the commercial. I understand that the commercial real estate's
Couple of questions. Very interesting. Mr. Hold, in what way can we thank you very much, Robert. Making the assumption that Robert's suggesting that some of the crime, this terrible thing that happened in Binghamton, 3 police officers shot in Pennsylvania just the other day, and you get the feeling that people are saying, well, everybody's frustrated. What would stop that from happening, assuming that maybe some of that is as a result of economic frustration or economic pressure? What framework would stop that sort of thing from happening? What economic framework?
Well, I think the government has to start by being honest with the people. The AIG example comes to mind. Barack Obama said it was shameful to give those people those bonuses. And in fact, the Democrats had voted only a few months before to allow those bonuses. So we have to stop the public lynching and the condemnation of the hardworking and the enterprising, and give people the right message, not rally with lynch mobs.
Why do you think people reacted so, for want of a better term, violently toward it? I mean, there were protests and other things.
Because they only understand the sticker version. It's more complex than what they understand. The people at AIG who were brought on to fix the mess and clean up the derivatives mess were promised their bonuses by a Democratic vote in Congress. It's in the legislation, and were again promised by their employer.
Or if they were not having such trouble making their own ends meet, they probably wouldn't give 2 bits about the people at AIG. So when they hear that government monies are going to AIG and those monies are going to continue to line the pockets of the enterprising or the rich, however you want to characterize it, people say, hey, wait a minute, where's mine? And these are not people who are, very well to do. They're people who are having a difficult time making ends meet every single day of the week.
Right, but it's now worse for them because as we've chased away the AIG executives who need to unwind $640 billion of derivatives mess, if their replacements do a 2% worse job with that $640 billion, that's going to cost the American taxpayers $32 billion. It would have been better to have paid the $100+ million in bonuses. So the lynchings, the assailing.
Or would it be better to take $100 million and put them into community services in the Bronx so that these people can see that their children can grow and develop, and then you end up spending less when you're spending $500 million on a jail in Hunts Point, and people can see a more positive outlook to the things going on in their lives.
But we still have to unwind that $640 billion of derivative toxic
well,
derivatives
what I'm
mess.
suggesting there is that the priorities are wrong, giving that money to for bonuses at AIG when people in the Bronx and in New York City and in many urban places are having trouble just keeping their kids in school and getting the right services so that their kids can have what the resources they need to grow and develop.
Well, that AIG bonus mess is going to cost America many more billions than the $100+ million, because if you're an outsider looking to do business in America, you look at what happened. The government made a promise, it voted on it, and the people who came in to clean that mess thought that they were doing their civic duty, and instead they got ridiculed.
Professor, your thought on the AIG bonuses and the dialogue we've just had?
I come from corporate, basically, and we always turned out to take a look at bonuses related to performance. If a company is not performing, should the individual really get a bonus for poor performance? And when a company is going out because they have no funds and they go to the government to borrow funding, regardless, should we pay bonuses to people that didn't do a good job and put the company in that position to begin with? Mm-hmm. So that's $170 million of taxpayers' money. What did they do to get us in that position to begin with? And I think AIG's been back to the bank, what, 3 times at least for money from the government?
Mm-hmm. So then this goes back to your original premise, is that the government, in essence, paid the bonus without really keeping, or paid AIG bailout money without really keeping track of what the rules and regulations are.
I
so
think
that for you is a frustration.
I also think contracts are made to be broken. All contracts are made to be broken in business. So the idea is if you've got the money up front to pay these bonuses and it's coming out of their money, that's fine. But it shouldn't be coming out of money that the government is giving them to stay alive, to stay afloat.
Let's go to Sydney from the Grand Concourse. We haven't heard from you in a while. How are you, Sydney? What's going on?
Good evening, Gary. How are you?
We're fine.
Hi. Hello to your guests. Gary, I saw this morning in the news a company that had outsourced their jobs to another country, and they reconsider and they bring in 2,000 jobs back to the States. I think it would be a good idea if other companies follow that outsourced in the past and start helping Americans get back on their feet. And another thing, raise taxes on alcohol so we could use those tax dollars to keep our hospitals open. Thank you.
Well, you have two issues there, and one is the idea of outsourcing of jobs, a very interesting question. Many companies right now, if you pick up the phone and you were to call for service support on many of the large companies, you'll get somebody in another country. Wouldn't it be nice if a lot of those companies would have their base of operations in America, if not elsewhere? Your thoughts?
Sure. Hold Brothers has a big outsourcing operation in India. We have about 40 staff there and 20 programmers in addition to traders. And we have staff in China as well. And we keep a healthy staff in Jersey City too. While we try to keep jobs in America where we can, we have to compete in a market where if we don't keep up with the competition, we'll go out of business. So if our competitor is paying $10,000 a year for a programmer and we're paying $120,000 in America, we're going to get run out of business.
What would it take for you to turn that around and say, you know what, that's interesting, we're happy to, we have a nice operation in China, but I'd like to invest that in America. Would we all benefit if you were to take that Indian operation and that Chinese operation and put it in Pennsylvania or in Maryland?
Well, you should understand, as a U.S. citizen, I have to pay my worldwide taxes, my taxes from worldwide income to America. So America is benefiting. They're getting all the loot from India and China, if you will. And people should understand that there's going to be a homeostasis, a balance between jobs that you can keep onshore and jobs that you.
But then answer Sydney from the Grand Concourse, who said basically directly to the kind of thing that you're doing, you know what? I know people in my neighborhood who could use those jobs. And if you keep paying people in other countries for those jobs, that's not going to help stimulate our economy, other than that you might be doing well and hiring some people, but that's not helping the people in the Bronx or elsewhere get jobs.
In America, part of what has kept us ahead and powerful is not being afraid of change. So if you held on to the last four-wheel horse and buggy company and said, don't lose those jobs, forget about the Model T automobile, you'd be wasting everybody's money and time. So things change, and we have to retool. I have to retool all the time with my company.
Why not retool with an American base?
We do where we can. We still keep our headquarters in America, or our top management is in America, and we have to be practical. And if we don't have an India operation, I don't see how we'd stay in business.
Professor, how can we stop the outsourcing of jobs or get companies to invest in America? Mr. Hold believes that if he did that, it would cost him and he wouldn't be able to continue in business.
Well, there's a lot of problems that are associated with outsourcing. Number one, it makes sense for a company to stay in operations to reduce their overall cost of operations by outsourcing. So to spend less this year to do something somewhere else is good management policy. On the other hand, if we're taking a lot of jobs out of the United States, what can we do to sort of control that?
That's the question.
We can't control it if we have labor unions, but certainly the government could step in and say, if you're a company that gets government contracts, then we have to work out some kind of ratio here on the amount of people you outsource versus the amount of people you keep internally. And if you don't do that ratio workout, you're just not going to get the government contracts that are going to be millions of dollars a year. So that's one way the government could step in and sort of control that.
Let's ask our friend, Mr. Hold, would you accept something like that if they were to say, you know what, here's a regulation. In order for you to continue doing business, there was some limitation on what you could outsource?
I don't think it would be smart, because we have other global competitors all over Europe, France, England, Germany, who are ready to eat my lunch. So if the administration makes me live with an albatross around my neck so that I can't compete globally, then we all lose, because my company shrinks, our company's contribution to society shrinks.
Is there a way to make that attractive so that you can do well, keep the money here on these shores, and still compete?
I think you just have to let your capitalists run, and don't burden them.
But you see, this is what we've done. We've let the capitalists run, and now we have the worst recession in 100 years.
Well, you know, there are approaches where some organizations, or some areas, I should say, geographical areas, can reduce their taxes. For instance, you have green areas. I believe Jersey City has one, a green area, where the sales tax is less.
Oh, we have a UEZ zone, right?
Okay, so that may be an approach to decrease the amount of taxations that companies would be paying if they brought some of those policies into view. Before, I had mentioned the fact of having the government step in about outsourcing. I'm talking about stepping in with companies that are getting government contracts, only government contracts. If the government is paying you millions of dollars a year because you're getting government contracts, well, let's work out the ratio. That may be doable. It's not going to be doable for every company, but it's going to be doable for companies that get government contracts that are very lucrative.
This segues nicely into the GM controversy. We had an auto industry, which is, of course, vital to our way of life here in the United States, and it was, I guess, still on the precipice, although maybe less so. What did you think about the elimination, or the president's, in essence, firing the head of General Motors?
Well, General Motors wasn't doing a good job to begin with, but that's a complicated industry to begin with. I don't think people realize how complicated it is to get into the auto industry. They're based on commitments they make to their suppliers. They're locked in by contractual agreements. They can't get out of them unless they have to get sued if they get out of them.
If General Motors is manufacturing an inferior car, Mr. Hold talked a lot about competing globally. General Motors cars are terrible. Let's face it, the Americans like Japanese cars because they're better cars. if GM has not demonstrated that it could build a better car from an engineering standpoint, from an ecological standpoint, shouldn't the people running General Motors get the heck out and let's get somebody in there with a modern thinking and a clear new way of doing business? Mr. Hold talked about change.
But the quality of GM vehicles has increased a great deal over what it was in the past.
But
the idea
it's
is
still nowhere comparable to what the Japanese are making with Toyota and Nissan and all the other
Well, the
cars.
idea is people don't want to buy something that may be going out of business either. If GM went out of business or went into the position to restructure their finances, how would you really indicate there's going to be dealers around to service your vehicle?
I'm curious
That
your
would be a
thoughts
problem.
on what happened at General Motors.
Well, I think the axing of the CEO, Mr. Wagoner, was kind of for the public's appetite. Barack Obama wanted to show the public that he was doing something, but I think we should have let the auto industry
Fix itself?
Fix itself or fail. Nobody
Or fail?
Or fail. I don't.
Considering all the jobs that might be lost?
Listen, Hold Brothers has been in business 15 years. We've had a couple of rough years. I never expected anyone to rescue us when we were losing money around the brink. We're all big boys, and
But if you let them fail, you have all these people who would lose jobs. I mean, isn't there all those people? You would collapse the economy of the state of Michigan, and which of course could be a trickle down for any number of other calamities. If General Motors, you say, well, just let them go.
this is a natural evolution in capitalism. We have to move people from one industry that's failing into a new emerging industry. So at Hold Brothers, we might lose a couple of people in this department, but add a couple at another
Are
department.
we in that evolution of capitalism now? Again, I believe, and I think many people believe, that our reliance on capitalism has caused this problem.
Listen,
We're almost out of time, so you're going to have to answer real quick.
I think GM is going to change. It's probably going to be a much different company than it is today. I don't think we can really afford to let them go.
Okay, last word. You know what? Let's put up phone numbers and contact for it's hold.com and monroecollege.edu. Gentlemen, this dialogue, we could do another hour, I'm sure. Gregory Hold, thank you very much. Professor Andrew Raleigh, thank you very much. If you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future program. Now, next Monday night, we will focus on the opening of the baseball season with two filmmakers who have produced a fascinating interplay about the Yankees, the new stadium, the borough of the Bronx. Should be great, so be sure to join us. Then the week after, we'll talk with the head of the City Council's Transportation Committee, Queens Councilman John Liu, and the week after, on April 27th, we'll have whoever wins this special election for borough president. That will be on the 27th of April. So we'll see you then, and every Monday night at 9 here on Bronx Talk Channel 6.